Hi there. Welcome to The PrevenTable, the podcast giving you a seat at the table with conversations about the intersection of alcohol, drugs, and mental health in everyday lives. Take a seat and join us.
Welcome to The PrevenTable. With me today are two esteemed guests, Zabrina and Audrey, and they are from Smart Parents Do This, which I am just finding out about, and I'm loving it. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So you both are social workers by trade, right?
I'm not.
You are not.
I'm an educator.
Oh.
So I started off teaching 20 plus years ago. And now.
What grade? All grades?
I taught high school.
Yeah, I love middle school.
Oh,
Yeah. Do you
That's
have a
always the fun.
favorite age, Zabrina?
Elementary or high.
But not middle.
Not middle.
What's the matter?
Oh,
Too
that's
much-
all the
too much
crazy
body
in the
odor?
middle. They don't know they want to be babies or adults. No, I don't want them to.
You don't want them.
I
Okay.
don't.
All right. I get it. Well, keep me away from the little guys when they're like all like grabby and snotty. No,
Yeah.
thank you. No, thank you.
agree.
I do like high school though. I
Yeah,
like high school a
they're
lot.
fun. They're
So
fun.
Smart Parents Do This. What is this?
Okay, so we created Smart Parents Do This under the premise that we know, as educators, social workers, that all parents want their children to be successful. It doesn't matter socioeconomic status, skin color, family makeup, political affiliation. All people want their children to be successful. So, but the problem is that not everybody knows how to do that, what that looks like. And so parents are busy, right? And so who has the time to go out and do the research on what that looks like? And so we did the research for them and said, here's how it can work. And we created it in an easy to read format so that if they follow our 6 steps, they can create this school smart home, with the goal of a school smart home being, let's try and create the most conducive home environment that will complement what teachers are doing during the day.
I love this. Okay,
Oh,
for so many reasons. So as a former educator myself,
Okay.
so I taught middle school.
Oh.
And I'll just be honest, like it was hard.
Yeah.
Right? It was really hard. And I wanted to adopt all my kids, which of course isn't the answer. And I felt like they needed so much more than the textbook stuff. Not to say that's not important, right? But like there were more life skills, coping strategies that they needed. And that's what really led me into public health, which has led me into Prevent+Ed.
Okay.
But I would have conversations with the adults in their lives. Maybe it was grandmas, maybe it was aunts and uncles, maybe it was the biological parents who like literally had no idea how to keep the structure going that they had in school. And the kids crave structure,
They
you
do.
know.
Yes.
So it would have been awesome for me to like hand them this book and say, here's how to keep it going.
Yes.
So how did this idea come up? I mean, was this like around like a kitchen table or like what? Like I want origin
Kind of.
story. here.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we work with a lot of families as social worker, as an educator.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was starting to see some of my former students, high school students, who then found themselves as parents.
Yep.
And because of the situations that they grew up in, they had no positive mental model on what parenting should look like. You mentioned structure. That's one of our 6 S's, we call them. You know, So simple things, but people need help and structure and how to put this all together. And so that was our goal. It's just to help families make parenting. Well, parenting is never going to be easy.
Yeah, right.
Never going to
Exactly.
be easy. But it can be, what would you say? More.
Easier.
Yes. Very. Yeah.
It can be easier, less stressful.
Yes.
Less stressful.
Less stressful.
So we always say at Prevent+Ed, we always say like there's no guidebook on how to parent. But maybe
Now
this
there
is
is,
it. I was
yes.
gonna say maybe this is it.
Could be it, yes.
Interesting. So school smart. I love that term. School smart parenting. What does that mean? And I know that you're on here, you know, we've invited you because there's obviously connections between how you talk to your kids about substance use and how you model and structure and all coping strategies and all those things you teach them. But like, what does it mean to parent in a school smart way?
I think that really covers, again, the 6 S's. If you do the 6 S's, you're going to be parenting in a school smart way because then your child will be prepared when they get into the school system. And what we found out is that during COVID, when everyone was home, like, it was very important to have the structure, to have the supplies you needed, to have supervision, to make sure your kids were actually going to bed on time and still be prepared for school, as opposed to laying down in the bed on the Chromebook, or it was still some structure that needs to take place. So I think that piece also made people aware that, oh, it's some work we still need to do to make sure kids are ready when they leave home to come into the school building.
Yeah.
So do you find sometimes, I don't know, maybe this is going to sound silly, but do you sometimes when I do a parent meeting, especially if it's like a high school parent meeting, I inherited a 6-year-old, so she's not my biological daughter, kind of calls me her stepmom during COVID, so that was a whole host of things. Sometimes I feel like I'm an imposter talking to a high school parent about how to care for a high school parent or a high school child. Does that make sense? Like, I've never had a high schooler. So I'm here giving wisdom. And sometimes I leave and I'm like, who am I? So sometimes do you all feel like the bar is set really high, that you have to like really just be like this amazing parent and be practicing what you preach in order to, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
understand.
but we've been asked before, are you parenting experts? Should I tell them my story?
Tell them your story,
Yes.
please.
Yeah.
So I was once asked at a conference, you're a parenting expert. And I said, okay, let me answer that question with this story. My oldest son, Jack, who's in college, when he was in preschool, and I took him to this nice little church-ran preschool, I picked him up that day, and the teacher met me and said, oh, Jack, we wanted to tell you about Jack today at snack time. And I thought, okay. And she goes, we were asking him what he wanted for his drink. And the options were juice, milk, or water. And they said, and Jack is 3. And they said, he took his time and even looked up and said, I think I'll have a margarita. Right. So no parenting expert here. But what we have found is our combined years of experience and working with students, working with families, we see things that are universal. Everybody needs some sleep, whether it be high school kids or the teeny tinies, everybody needs sleep. And so many of our families think, my kids get to bed on time. But then when we show them what the experts really say, between 10 and 13 hours of sleep for an elementary child, and people still think, oh yeah. But then when we have them go through the actual, what does your night look like? If the bedtime is really 8 o'clock, but you've been getting the child to bed by 9:30, that's a big difference.
That's huge.
And then let's do the hard work of what does it look like to rearrange the evening, your schedule, to make this priority, this sleep priority, happen. That's where things begin to move around, which is really powerful stuff, and yet it's such a simple thing.
Right. And I know people are probably listening to this going, yeah, you try getting my,
Right, it's not
8-year-old
easy.
in bed an hour earlier. Like,
Yeah.
hilarious, especially when we're driving around to soccer and I can barely get a meal in, and who knows if that meal is home cooked. Like, so sometimes it is easier said than done. And even in the short time that I've met with both of you, I mean, you both seem to really understand that parenting or caring for a child is a journey. Like, there's not a destination.
Yes,
right?
definitely
like
a marathon. Yeah.
Right.
And the thing that we found too, that with parenting, schools that take on smart parents do this for a parent night, it provides parents an opportunity to network with one another. And like you just said, okay, I'm having problems getting my 8-year-old to agree with going to bed. Well, another parent, an older parent, maybe this is her 3rd child, is has things to say, we tried this, and you just begin to see this community build. And it's powerful because then you're not the only one, because you're not.
Right.
And then you begin to have this network of people who are doing parenting together.
So it's interesting. I was talking to one of our supporters the other day who has a high schooler. And the high schooler really wants to go to a after prom party that is not school sanctioned. A bunch of parents are hosting it. There's going to be alcohol and all sorts of things involved. And the supporter called me and said, help. I'm sort of darned if I do and darned if I don't, right? Because if she doesn't get to go, then she's like the outcast because everyone, quote unquote, is doing this. But then if I do allow her to go, then it's like condoning the behavior. And my first question to her was, does your daughter have friends, and what are the parents doing? Are you talking about this? Because I said, I guarantee you're not the only one.
You're not alone.
And she said, oh, we don't talk about these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We might talk about, where they got their prom dress from, or what the issue they're having with so-and-so teacher. Well, we're not talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so true, right? Like that parents don't want to talk about the really tough stuff. And then we sort of end up falling in line with peer pressure. Like peer pressure doesn't stop when you graduate high
That's
school.
true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Right.
if you're, doing this sleep training model and somebody else, then if you're not doing it, then you almost feel like this weird sort of like, well, I should be doing that too.
Yeah.
So how does that topic come up when you all are doing
The structure about the high school?
The structure, the sort of the mom shaming, for
well,
lack of a better word.
When we talked about our 6 S's and you mentioned structure, one of the really great things that happens in a middle school or a high school, and ideally the sooner schools start this, the better off they are.
You're talking elementary school.
We're talking elementary,
Love
middle,
it.
and high.
Love it. Prevention.
Yeah, but we have seen where middle schools and even high schools where parents come to, a Smart Parents Do This night, and when you get to structure is, what is the structure of your house? If you're talking to high school parents, are your kids home by midnight? Or are you, is 2 a.m. acceptable? And then, parents begin to talk. So then if you're the guy that's, everybody has to be in this house by midnight, and then if, you can begin to pull, and then it's not just your child that has to be home by midnight.
Yes,
Now
right.
all the parents have bought into this idea, and it creates this sense of community where this is what we stand for. We're a school smart home. And nothing good happens after midnight.
Right, but I'm going to say that. So yes, absolutely.
Got it.
So those are things. In our middle school, you mentioned middle school.
Yeah.
I could spend a whole podcast talking about middle school families. A lot of times middle school families are kind of like, meh, they're grown.
Totally.
But they almost need the most structure and the most help. And so things like that, if you can get that, devices, we advocate that for every age group, your devices are not in their rooms while they sleep. And if you start that when they're
1000%.
teeny tiny in elementary school, they know no different when they get to middle and high. But even middle and high school kids can make that transition. It might be painful, but that's okay.
Kids are resilient.
Yeah.
It's more painful for us grown-ups.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Parenting is hard.
Parenting is hard.
Yeah.
We used to do, we don't anymore because we realize there are other organizations that do it better, but we used to do some sort of technology presentations specifically for adults to say like you should probably learn something and at least learn how to check their accounts and ask for their passwords and, learn basic things. And, it was awesome when we would have the kids sitting right next to the parents so that they could sort of like compare and be like, yeah, that's actually true. Or, yeah, what do you have on there? You know what I mean? But it was fascinating because a lot of the adults in the room were like, oh, the middle schoolers, like they already have it figured out. And it's like, ooh, wow, no,
they don't.
But then also it was a kind of a cool situation because you could see the conversation starting to happen, right? And the light bulbs going on about like, oh, I probably should check this account and I should know what's going on.
Which you bring up a really good point. Our final S is support. And when I think about Prevent+Ed and how to prevent, drugs and alcohol, that's how we go at it, is support. Too many of our families we find are sitting, maybe they're having a meal together, but the parents are on the phone, the kids are on their phone, and there's not enough conversation going on. So we try to teach families how to have more meaningful conversation in lieu of, how was your day? Good, great. So we create activities and things for families to get to know their kids better, to establish those strong relationships based on research that says that kids that have at least one positive relationship with an adult, ideally a parent, avoid a lot of the negative teenage behaviors.
Yes,
absolutely. So, again, starting earlier is better, but there's still time to do it in middle school and in high school.
So let's say that I am like just my ears have perked up and I'm like, okay, I need this in my life. So how do people go about finding you, and talk a little bit about, are you primarily geared towards the parent themselves? Are you more at like a PTO level or both? Or
That's a great idea. There are a couple ways. People that are listening that want their school district to, or their school, they can just go to our website or contact us. And that would be, I think, you tell me, Z, I think that's the most beneficial, because then everyone in your school, ideally, is on board. And if they're not on board, they probably, like you said, with positive peer pressure, will get on board because it's just good for kids. It's good for families. And then we're also, our book is on Amazon for single, if people just want to buy just a single copy. But am I missing? I love the PTA idea,
Absolutely.
though.
And we also have a children's book.
Oh,
Sleep
yes.
Makes You Smart. It's on
Yes.
what is it
Amazon.com.
called?
Sleep Makes You Smart. Because, again, children need so many hours of sleep. And so even for me, if I don't get enough rest, I'm cranky, I'm irritable, I need some more sleep. And so a lot of times we think kids may be angry, but they could be tired, they could be hungry, they could have had a late night. So it's a lot of other factors that could play into that. And so that's our first book regarding RS.
Ooh, I like how you said that's your first book.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
a series.
It's the first.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a series, and we have little characters that are adorable. They are adorable.
Of course they are.
And
And I'm
it's-
loving your shirts
Yes,
right
yeah.
now. I
Yeah,
love
we have
your
little kid
shirts.
characters, and and the sleep thing. I mean, we're so quick in education to jump to ADD or ADHD,
Right, to diagnose it.
yes, or do some sort of. And when sometimes I wonder, is he just tired? Is she just tired?
Are they just hungry?
Yeah.
Like, are they lonely?
So,
like,
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So sleep can make such a world of difference, and that's our first step.
And could I also say this too about sleep for those who are listening? A lot of times the education system really stress sleep during MAP testing.
Yes.
And so let's be real clear that sleep is important starting the first day of school. Because if you have not been getting sleep all year, it's going to be really hard to now try to get on schedule for 3 or 4 weeks for the
Because
test.
you can't just catch up on the
you
weekends, right?
cannot.
Like, I love sleep.
Me
It is
too.
like maybe my favorite thing to do. And so sometimes I'm like, well, I'll just catch up on the weekends.
Yeah.
But everything I've read has said that
It's no catch up.
Right.
it doesn't really help, and it's like a cumulative effect, right?
Right.
So that's a really, because they're exhausted, they're mentally and physically
And their bodies are growing, trying to grow,
trying
to get all of that positive sleep. Yeah. So
So what?
important.
How long have y'all been in existence, by the way? How long has this business been a real thing?
Since 2017, because I was with
Really?
child. Yes.
oh wow, time flies.
Yes.
Wow. So I know clearly more children's books. What is next on the horizon for you all?
Oh, that's a good question.
And did you say Alaska? People in Alaska?
Yes,
are using it?
yes. The Lower Yukon Peninsula of Alaska just bought Smart Parents Do This for all of their schools.
Woo!
Yes,
Shout out to the
Yeah.
Lower Yukon of
yes,
Peninsula of Alaska.
We are
Yes.
huge Alaskan fans now.
Okay.
Yeah, the Urban League of St. Louis is using it
Awesome.
for their early childhood or Head Starts. Who?
Our very first.
Oh, yes.
Our very first was East St. Louis 189.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes. So
Yeah.
they
Love it.
also are
Yeah.
participants or collaborators with Smart
Yes.
Parents Do This.
Yeah. And then COVID hit and kind of
Oh,
threw us,
no.
Well,
Isn't-
we don't even need to mention it.
Isn't
But
that
yeah.
the truth? I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like you should have like one book that's just like bouncing back from COVID.
Yeah, that's a great,
Like
a great
we
idea.
don't talk about Bruno. Like we don't talk about COVID.
Yeah.
Like it's the one.
Yeah.
Like it's like a 2-year period chunk
Yes.
of time where it's like
Yeah.
Yeah,
some
right.
of us regress.
Yes.
Well,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah. You mentioned your website, but I don't think you
Oh, yeah,
gave
we
it.
didn't.
So could you make sure that you're mentioning handles and websites and anything how people can find you?
Yeah, so www.smartparentsdothisllc.com. So smartparentsdothisllc.com.
And are you on social?
We are.
Yes.
Everything is Smart Parents Do This. Facebook, IG. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming. I feel like I'm like invigorated.
Oh,
like, I
yay.
feel like
Great.
yes. I
Yeah.
feel like okay, I'm gonna go home today and I'm gonna make sure the kiddo's getting enough sleep.
Oh, good.
I feel like I do a pretty good job at structure. Sometimes I feel like I need to like
Oh, yeah.
chill out a
Pull
little bit.
back.
Okay.
But you're like inspiring
Oh,
me.
good.
So
Oh,
you're
great.
inspiring me. So
Yeah.
thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming
You're
today.
welcome.
If you love this content, if you want more of this information, consider rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the PrevenTable podcast. I cannot wait to see you at future parent meetings. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for joining us at The PrevenTable, brought to you ad-free by Prevent+Ed. Prevent+Ed works to reduce or prevent the harms of alcohol and other drug use through education, intervention, and advocacy. Please visit their website at PreventEd.org. Like what you heard? Rate, review, and subscribe to stay up to date with what we are serving on The PrevenTable.